Well, there is a very interesting partnership between The Chosen and Prison Fellowship. The Chosen is going to be making its way into prisons. Can you tell us a little bit about how this partnership came to be?
Hi, Billy. Yes, we had some outreach just sharing how The Chosen and the Come and See Foundation really wanted to expand their audience to reach everyone with the authentic Jesus, from the palace to prison, if you will. And so we said, well, we would love to help with that. And so ever since we've had that initial conversation, we have been working to set up select screenings and places where we have programs, as well as make it available on Prison Fellowship's Floodlight platform, which is available to chaplains all over the country in facilities so that they can set up their own screenings as well.
Tell us a little bit about that Floodlight platform for those who don't know.
Sure. So, Floodlight actually born out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We had some outreach from departments of corrections saying we've got people on lockdown inside, and the programming perhaps Prison Fellowship is normally able to do during that time in person wasn't possible. And we don't want people sitting idle. Do you have some digital content we could make available? And so that's when we stood up this platform called Floodlight, and we make it available to chaplains, and we upload our own content, inspiring stories, sermon content, as well as other things that just bring people hope behind bars. And post COVID, we've continued to use it as a way to leverage getting in more digital content in places where we're not able to have in person programming. But I will say there's no substitute for that in person programming. That's really where we see a lot of life change. But we're so grateful to be able to scale in this way.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, out of COVID, all of these things that happened and the reactions that we had to have to it, to be able to sort of walk away with a new tool that, as you were saying, the in-person is always better, but being able to have that other digital option is pretty incredible. As for The Chosen itself, you were talking a little bit about the logistics of that. I'd love to hear a little bit more of how that's facilitated. It sounds like some will be in person, some will also be then digital.
Yes. So the chaplains are able to set up their own screenings if they want to, downloading The Chosen and setting those up inside facilities. We also have several hundred prisons where Prison Fellowship runs in person programming. And so in some of those facilities, we've been able to set up special screenings and watch parties of The Chosen. One of my favorite stories of this partnership has been at the Carol Vance unit, our very first Prison Fellowship Academy, where we have men going through a month long or a year long transformation process, really digging into why they came here to prison. And it's been so exciting for them. They've had these watch parties of the seasons as they've come out. And we've just been seeing such amazing transformation in the men as a result of the opportunity to see the authentic Jesus. And not only that, to see the people he chose, many lost, the least, and really being able to resonate with the disciples that Jesus chose to be part of the greatest awakening the world's ever known. And I think they really resonate that with that in the position that they're in.
Yeah, and this is made available for free, right? There's not a cost obviously for the chaplains to use this or for others to be using this in the prisons.
Exactly. 100% available for free. We are just so excited to be able to share this content and grateful to the Chosen and the Come and See Foundation for making that possible.
So you've already heard stories of transformation as a result of this. When you look at the full scope of this, at the end of the day, there are obviously going to be 7 seasons of The Chosen. When you look at this particular series, what is your hope through Prison Fellowship for the life change and the impact of this chosen partnership?
Yes. For some people in prison who don't yet know Jesus or have a relationship with him, my hope is certainly that they'll see the authentic Jesus. And we hear stories of that with the chosen all over the world, regardless of whether someone's in prison. But what I also think is so unique is that the story of the chosen focuses on who Jesus chose, right? And he chooses all of us, but he especially hones in on the people in that time who were seen at the margins of society, the people perhaps no one else wanted to be with, right? And those who perhaps thought their life was over, that they had nothing to contribute to the world. And I think when I look at the modern day marginalized, I can think of no one perhaps who fits that bill better than people sitting behind bars. And so my greatest hope really is that it would actually be a tool for letting those who are followers of Jesus behind bars know that they have a role to play in advancing the kingdom. And we see that now as people who are followers of Jesus in prison are saying, "Hey, would you want to come watch The Chosen with me? It's screening tonight in the chapel. Come with me. You're going to be surprised by what you see." And we actually see inside people being the greatest evangelists to those that they live with inside prison.
Yeah, there's two really interesting streams when it comes to The Chosen. You have the people who are already believers who are sort of getting reinvigorated because it's causing them to want to go back to the Bible and read the stories and maybe see things in a different way that they haven't envisioned them before, because reading something and seeing it is often very different. And
Right.
then you have the evangelistic side of it that you were just referring to as well. Those two things, whether you're in prison or outside of prison, are happening with people. Have you heard stories of inmates coming to faith as a result of watching The Chosen?
Yes, we even were able to jointly do a testimony and story of some of the men at Carol Vance in Texas, our first academy, watching The Chosen and the impact that it's having on them. And so we know that it is not only kind of opening up those questions of people to ask about who is Jesus and make those decisions perhaps for the first time, but also that reference I made of really strengthening people who are already following Jesus and realizing, you know what? I actually, even sitting from behind bars here, I have a role to play in advancing the kingdom, just like Jesus' early disciples. And so we've also got testimonies of that as well.
That's incredible. And, let's talk a little bit about prison fellowship more generally, because this is a ministry that's been around. A lot of people know it, but some people might not be familiar. Obviously, working in prisons, talk a little bit about the history and what you're currently doing.
Yes. So Prison Fellowship, we've been around for almost 50 years now. We were founded by the late Chuck Colson, and we are known for really bringing restoration to people impacted by crime and incarceration. We do that top down and bottom up in prisons. We've got prison programs like the Prison Fellowship Academy that are addressing why people came to prison. We also work with wardens and we address transformational leadership skills. How can they change their prison culture? And then that extends to families. We know that incarceration has a ripple effect. It doesn't just affect the person in prison, but their loved ones are left behind. We have a program called Prison Fellowship Angel Tree. It's our largest church program. We reach over 250,000 kids every year with a gift on behalf
Wow.
of their incarcerated parent. And we hope that that opens doors to relationships with the church partners who do that service. And then finally, we're also an advocate for justice reform. And so we're active with the administration and Congress and in several state campaigns, really trying to make sure that the gospel values we preach individually to people are also reflected in the public square.
And this is a question that you probably hear often, but I think it's an important one because we've talked throughout this conversation about people in prison sort of being forgotten. I think there are a lot of assumptions made. Obviously, you've made a mistake, 99% of the time. If you're in prison, you've done something, you've made some mistake. We're all sinners. We all make mistakes in life. But something has landed you in legal trouble. And yet you have this population that people don't often think about. Why should Christians pay more attention and be more engaged with the prison population?
Mm. I look to Hebrews 13, which says, "Remember those in prison as if you were there with them." That's our call, is to know that Jesus came for everyone, and he especially, as so brilliantly demonstrated in the Chosen series, he especially came for the least and the lost. And in fact, he used them then to really spark the greatest spiritual awakening the world's ever known. Why wouldn't he do it again? And so I would just encourage those watching today, if you feel like maybe you haven't really thought about people behind bars, this is a calling for all of us as Christians. We can get involved through Angel Tree with the families that are local to us, and we can also go visit prison. And I guarantee you're going to be surprised that you find Jesus is already alive and well and working there.
Well, I so appreciate you taking the time today, coming on to talk not only about prison fellowship, but this incredible partnership that you have with The Chosen. Looking forward to having you back again sometime soon.
Thanks, Billy.